One of the things I tell a lot of people in my personal life, why I'm not more animated, why I stay even keel, why you won't see me get too high and too low, is because I'm 6'4", 200 pounds, because they're going to see me as a threat. It's not just black men. It is men in general, but there are cultural differences where, as a black man in this country, I have to operate in a certain way that maintains that I come home safely. And unless you are black, you can never understand that.
You gotta understand, loneliness, again, comes from a lack of feeling that emotional or social connection.
Unsolicited Perspectives podcast. Episode clip.
I've done stuff privately on male loneliness. Me and you have talked about the male loneliness epidemic, but what we haven't done is had a micro conversation of black male loneliness. And it's interesting because the article argues that black men are experiencing a growing loneliness crisis that goes far behind, simply being alone. It connects to emotional isolation, to masculinity, racism, economic pressure, and the ways many men are taught to suppress vulnerability for an early age. And the article starts off with this black man explaining that his father was crying at one point and apologized for crying. And it symbolizes the fact that black men, and not just black men, but men in general, but culturally, black men are taught to suppress our emotions because we can't be too emotional. One of the things I tell a lot of people in my personal life, why I'm not more animated, why I stay even keel, why you won't see me get too high and too low, is because I'm 6'4", 235, 240 pounds, with tattoos, bald head. If I lose my temper, I could lose my life because somebody's going to call the authorities and they're going to shoot me because they're going to see me as a threat. So I've been taught to suppress that anger that's inside of me, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, every now and then you can see it come out, it bubble up underneath, and I fear for anybody that sees me lose my temper because I can't control it when I lose it. But it talks about how, black men are feeling unseen, unheard in the new society, and that black men, men don't cry, and that a lot of friendships, black male friendships, will dissipate sometimes because effort and intention is not being put in. And I know two of my best friends, black men, right? One of our friends is a better friend than the other two because he is always intentionally making effort. If there hasn't been anything said in the group chat over, 4, 5, 6 days, because we're grown and we're busy, he'll just be like, "Hi guys," saying, "Hey, look, we can't lose connection because I've known these guys for 30 years. They've known each other for 35, 40 years. Like, that type of relationship can't be lost." But a lot of black men, but a lot of black men aren't doing that. And so there's this growing sense of loneliness. And I was just curious to get your take on that, because they're saying that, it has a lot to do with cultural expectations and racism and economic stress and over-policing and chronic societal pressure. It's saying it's not solely just the men, it's society that's causing this. One of the things I tell a lot of people in my personal life, why I'm not more animated, why I stay even keel, why you won't see me get too high and too low, is because I'm 6'4", 200 pounds, because they're going to see me as a threat. It's not just black men. It is men in general, but there are cultural differences where, as a black man in this country, I have to operate in a certain way that maintains that I come home safely. And unless you are black, you can never understand that.
You gotta understand, loneliness, again, comes from a lack of feeling that emotional or social connection. I agree. So when we talk about just the male loneliness epidemic in general, right, we know that it's not about being alone. It's about a social isolation. And like this idea of emotional loneliness that it comes out of that. So when you compound that with systemic racial barriers to employment, housing, education, healthcare, specifically psychological and mental health care. Yeah, there's going to be an intensified effect of that loneliness on Black men. I 100% agree.
They also said that therapy still carries a stigma in the Black community, and it does.
It does.
It does. And that many Black men were raised to believe therapy is only for people who are broken. And
Yeah.
I mean, when you say broken, I mean, you talk about extreme type situations, right? Like, and it is a machismo thing. It's not just Black men. It is men in general, but there are cultural differences where you, as a Black man in this country, I have to operate in a certain way that maintains that I come home safely. And unless you are Black, you can never understand that. You can have empathy for me saying, hey, look, life out here is hard. Just like when I always tell the story of my homegirl in college who made me walk across campus to pick her up to go to the library because we had to work on a project together. And I was furious because it was all I had to walk from one end of the campus all the way to the other end of the campus to pick her up to walk to the middle part of the campus. It was, and it was cold. And I was just like, yo, why can't you just meet me there? She's like, as we're walking, she's like, look around. I'm like, yeah, what? It's cold out here. She's like, no, it's dark. I was like, we're on campus. Everything is fine. And this is before I started working for the newspaper and started reading the reports of assaults that were happening on campus that go unreported. And she was like, you think these little emergency phones, because we had that in Maryland, I could get help in the amount of time that I need the help? It's not immediate. So yes, I want you to come pick me up so that I could get to where I need to be safely. And I was like, I never even thought about that. And even still, as I'm walking on campus, I'm a grown man. I'm not, that fear of being attacked is not one of the fears that I have, but I had empathy for it. And I think when I read this article and some people are going to say, Black men don't have it harder than anybody else.
Nobody said harder.
Yeah.
It's different.
It's different. Yeah.
Because there are lanes. Right? And there are levels to this. And so no one is saying, no, this isn't like oppression Olympics, but there is a specific set of circumstances and obstacles that Black men face that compound the male loneliness epidemic. And those feelings of emotional isolation and loneliness. That's what we're saying.
And I know some of the questions people are going to ask. They're going to like, you think Black men are lonelier today than they were in yesteryear? I'm like, no, I just think that they're talking more about it. They're talking openly more about it. And they can acknowledge what it is finally. Right before, it was like, grandpa just sometimes will have the blues. No, he's lonely. And he recognizes that now.
Papa was a Rolling Stone. Why? Because he was looking for connection and not finding it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he didn't have to look for connection in other women.
But I feel like that's one of the ways in which like loneliness presents itself. I think infidelity, that's not always the cause, but a lot of it is, you got to understand, loneliness again comes from a lack of feeling that emotional or social connection.
That's where my infidelity came from.
Sure. But if you just get up, you go to work, you provide, but you got kids, and so you're disconnected from your partner and you don't really have any friends, because all you do is work and go home, and, you miss out on making an emotional connection, but you don't know that that's what you're missing out on because you're taught to suppress your emotion. So you don't even recognize that what you're crying out for is connection.
Mm-hmm.
Authentic and real connection with another human being.
Join the conversation and follow the Unsolicited Perspectives podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your audio podcasts.